Imagine waking up and the entire ocean smells like a giant rotting teapot. For weeks after December 16, 1773, the shores of Boston didn't smell like salt. They smelled like 92,000 pounds of soggy fermenting leaves. We're taught the Boston Tea Party was a protest against high taxes. That's a lie. The tea in that harbor was actually cheaper than the stuff the colonists were smuggling. So why did 100 men risk execution to destroy $1.7 million worth of property? Because this wasn't a protest against a tax, it was a war against a corporate monster that was too big to fail. The tea didn't come from a farm in London. It was the byproduct of a brutal corporate occupation 8,000 miles away in India. Today, we're looking at the real Boston Tea Party, the heist that took down the 18th century's version of Amazon. Meet the British East India Company, EIC. In 1773, they weren't just a business, they were a private army with a trade permit. They ruled over India with an iron fist, but they had a problem. They were broke. Due to massive corruption and a horrific famine in Bengal, the EIC was on the verge of bankruptcy. If they went down, the British economy went with them. They had 18 million pounds of tea sitting in London warehouses rotting because nobody was buying it. The British government stepped in with the Tea Act of 1773. It was a massive corporate bailout. The plan? Let the EIC sell their surplus tea directly to America, bypassing the middleman. This made the legal tea cheaper than the illegal Dutch tea the colonists were used to. But there was a catch, a Trojan horse tax. If the colonists bought the cheap tea, they were technically consenting to be taxed by a parliament where they had no vote. It was the ultimate in-app purchase scam. On a freezing Thursday night, the tension breaks. 7,000 people, half the city of Boston, cram into the Old South Meeting House. The signal is given, Boston Harbor a teapot tonight. This wasn't a riot. It was a surgical strike. These men dressed as Mohawks, not to trick people into thinking they were Native Americans, but to symbolize that they were American and no longer British subjects. For 3 hours, they worked in total silence. They didn't steal a single leaf for themselves. They even swept the decks afterward. But they smashed exactly 342 chests. As the tide went out, the tea soup began to form. Because the tea was so densely packed, it didn't just float away. It piled up in haystacks of soggy leaves. The next morning, the British didn't just wake up to a financial disaster. They woke up to the smell of a dying empire. The EIC never got their money back. Instead of saving the company, the India connection triggered a chain reaction that birthed a new nation. Next time you see a Tea Party logo, remember, it wasn't about the price of the tea. It was about who gets to control the market, a giant corporation or the people. If you want to see how the East India Company eventually became so powerful they had their own nuclear equivalent navy, click here for our deep dive on the birth of corporate warfare. What would you do if your favorite brand got a government monopoly? Let me know in the comments.